let's just cover those off, and then we'll move on to GR3, please. Thank you.
So yes, inspectors, the modifications for policy GR2 are in order that they appear on PD11. Proposed modification MO58, which is the capitalisation of the proper noun borough, so an error in the text. Proposed modification MO221, which is to figure 10.2, which was the change in the title to strategic open spaces and their typology, as previously discussed. And modification MO222, which is to the supporting text of policy GR2, this relates to changes that set out that the new local plan proposes boundary changes to metropolitan open land. I believe that's covered in more detail within the council's response under the matter.
Thank you, that's helpful. I think just before we move on to policy GR3, conscious of time, and it's 10 to 3, and I'm just wondering what the council's view would be if we complete matter 13 today and then adjourn and do matter 14 in the morning, as opposed to carrying on today and then seeing how far we get. We're open to thoughts.
Yeah, the council would be happy with that. Complete this matter and then we start afresh tomorrow, looking at the sustainability issues. I think our attendants can attend in terms of the council participation. I don't think there is any other participants, so yes, that's.
Thank you, that's helpful. So we'll run to the end of matter 13 today, and then we'll adjourn at that point, whatever time that is, and then we'll start tomorrow morning for the matter 14, if you've got all the relevant people that you need for tomorrow.
Yeah, can you just give us 1 minute? Sorry, I'm just been reminded that we have Tanya, who's supposed to be attending. I think she did say, but.
Okay, we've had confirmation that all the council's witnesses that are relevant for matter 14 are able to come tomorrow. So I think that's what we'll do, and that gives a break and come fresh 9:30 tomorrow morning for matter 14. So right, without further ado, let's move on to policy GR3 then, please. So going back to the agenda. try and go through the agenda in order. So question 13.14, there's a piece about the local nature recovery strategy. Now I know in your statement you sort of cross-reference to the Environment Act, and the Biodiversity Action Plan is sort of the interim, isn't it, until the local nature recovery strategy is finished by summer 25. Just in terms of sort of certainty of how that work's going, is that likely that it will be finished by summer 2025? And if it wasn't, where does that leave policy GR3?
We've checked with our Greater London Authority colleagues, and they have said it's planned for summer 2025. Obviously, the live biodiversity action plan runs 2021 to 26. So it does give us a little bit of slippage in terms of 6 months or so. We can take that away and ask them again about certainty. With GLA work, they are a fairly small team in terms of the people that are working particularly on this, and deadlines sometimes slip, but I can't say any more than that, I'm afraid, until I contact them and see how far the work has got along.
I think that might be helpful to know if there are any likely changes to the timescale, because we would need to then possibly think about the effect on policy GR3. But I appreciate it's not something that's within your control. So thank you. So in terms of the next question, criterion relating to criterion D of policy GR3, my question is why is it necessary to include the words located outside of the borough?
I think what we're trying to demonstrate there is that large areas of biodiversity and open space don't necessarily fall neatly within administrative boundaries, and actually, a development on the edge of the borough could have an impact on adjoining designated land, and I think the criteria D is try to reflect that and make sure that there is some consideration of that. I think our response to MIQ 13.15, paragraph 10.15 of PD 01, the supporting text provides some explanation on this.
Thank you. So in terms of the modifications that you've got in your statement, I think they've translated themselves into MO223 and MO224, if I'm following the sequence correctly.
That is correct, yes.
So MO223 is to amend Part E to make reference specifically to the legislation. So we now have the Environment Act that has received its royal assent.
Yes, that is correct. Would you like me to explain MO224 as well?
Please.
Yes, by all means. So MO224 of PD 11 refers to the the policy's supporting text, which is paragraph 10.18, and deletes words and introduces new words. So it now will read: the Environment Act 2021 introduced provisions for biodiversity net gain (brackets BNG) that took effect for major planning applications on 12th of February 2024 and for small sites on 2nd of April 2024. It then continues and deletes a number of words which I believe are changes in tense rather than necessary for the technical reasons. It continues, I think, to the 5th or 6th sentence and deletes policy GR3E will be used as a guide until such further legislation and national policy take effect. That they have taken effect, so that is deleted. It continues by stating BNG should normally be delivered on site. However, flexibility may be applied in delete exceptional circumstances and insert on a case-by-case basis where it is demonstrated. And it continues.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I think MO224 absorbs MO60, doesn't it? In terms of it introduces that acronym.
Yes, that is correct.
Abbreviation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And clearly, when we consolidate the modifications table as instructed, that will all be addressed appropriately.
Now, just turning to criterion F. So this is about the need for the ecological assessment being carried out by a chartered ecologist. My question is, if you had a scenario where an ecological report was submitted with a proposal, but it wasn't carried out by a chartered ecologist, how would the council view that report in decision making? Is it sort of a mandatory requirement that you want a chartered ecologist to do that work?
Apologies. I think I may have to refer back to our validation checklist. I wonder if I can take that away and get back to you on that one.
Thank you. That would be helpful. I wouldn't want it to conflict with anything that you've already got in place. But if it's already on that list, then that would be helpful to know. Thank you. I think that's everything on my list for policy GR3.
Inspector Bus, there are some further modifications to GR3 which we haven't spoken about yet.
Ah, yes, thank you. That's 59, 60, 61, 62, and 63, is it not?
Yes. So in that order, 59 introduces the acronym. Within the policy, I should differentiate. 60 introduces the acronym within the supporting text. 61 refers back to the policy wording and introduces the words irreplaceable habitats within the context of they must also protect and conserve irreplaceable habitats. 62 also refers to the policy wording and introduces the sentence. For example, this could include, where appropriate, integrated bird, bat, and bee bricks, hedgehog highways, and reptile refugia / log piles. I'm assuming examples of different types of mitigation for different types of species. Proposed modification MO63 also relates to the supporting text paragraph and introduces the words must. So applicants must refer to the latest Lewisham Biodiversity Action Plan, and the addition to the end of that sentence, including consideration for potential requirements for important species features such as swift bricks, which are not included in the biodiversity net gain calculation. And I believe that the next proposed modification, MO225, and forgive me, I'm not as familiar with this part of the plan as other parts, may also still refer to policy GR03, and it relates to figure 10.7, and its amendments to 10.7 to ensure the designation of sinks remain correct and include new sinks.
Thank you, that's helpful. So policy GR4 Lewisham links. I think there are just some modifications to that. I don't have any further questions on that particular policy. So if we can just have a quick look at the modifications, please.
Apologies. Yes, proposed modifications run. I believe there are only two. To the main policy text itself and to the supporting text. In order, they are proposed modifications MO226 and MO227 respectively. The first to policy GR4 part A adds the sentence, so at the end of the sentence, figures 14.2, 14.3, 15.2, 15.3, 16.2, 16.3, 17.2, 17.3, 18.2 and 18.3 in part 3 Lewisham's neighbourhoods and places illustrate the Lewisham links for each of the character areas of Lewisham.
Just on that modification, we were just wondering whether it needed to be in the policy itself, or whether it is a level of detail that we could perhaps look in the supporting text. What are the council's thoughts on that one?
I think certainly the references to the figures could go in the supporting text. I'm wondering whether or not there just needs to be a reference to part 3 of the plan in the policy itself, and then we can expand on that in the supporting text and have the list of figures.
I think that sounds a sensible way forward, actually, if we can just refer to part 3 of the plan in the actual policy, and then the supporting text can obviously pick up the very detail of where the figures are. That would help that policy. Thank you.
My apologies for the slight delay. Proposed modification MO227 So I think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. MO227 relating to the supporting text paragraph 10.22. It does what we've just suggested. It inserts the references to the figures. So yes, thank you.
That's helpful. I think that tidies up that matter. Okay. So let's move on to policy GR5 and take the modifications for those, please.
Yes, Inspector, that there are two proposed modifications. The first to the policy wording at GR5 under Part F is set out under PD11 proposed modification MO228. It's amendments to the text, deleting certain text and replacing it with different text. The proposal will read as follows. Development proposals must look to retain protected trees, brackets, i.e. those covered by a tree preservation order and trees within conservation areas, close brackets. Developments should avoid imposing detrimental impacts on the health of protected trees and the visual amenity they provide. Full stop. And that is the end of the deletions and additions. The proposed modifications continue under proposed modification MO64, which relates to the supporting text at paragraph 10.32. It's a very simple and straightforward modification. It replaces through deletion the words SUDS drainage with sustainable drainage systems.
I think there was a further modification in criterion F. Have we looked at that one? I think that's just to correct a typo of tree protection order to be tree preservation order. I think that's. Thank you. Okay, turning over to policy GR6. So, in terms of the evidence base for this policy, have we got some specific evidence regarding the need for the amount of allotment and community gardens over the plan period? So I'm thinking, are there council waiting lists for allotments? Are there lots of inquiries for where community gardens could be established?
Obviously, the council does have a waiting list for allotments, specifically allotments. I can certainly provide that information. I haven't got that to hand, unfortunately, but I can certainly provide that. We did, obviously, through the open space assessment in 2020 B38, we looked at existing allotment space and the provision across the borough. But I don't think it, and I'll hand over to my colleague Keenan, but I don't think it gave a specific requirement in terms of additional allotment space over the plan period. Keenan, is there But if I may, we can come back to the inspectors with some information on our waiting lists.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful to us, just as as supporting evidence to underpin the policy, because it is something that I know councils do have, so it's not a hopefully too difficult to track down. Thank you. Okay, I don't have anything else on my list of questions now. So in terms of the modifications, I think we've got a couple of modifications proposed for policy GR6.
Yes, there are. I believe looking at PD11, the first is certainly a minor modification. It's removed the word retained from Part B, and that's shown under proposed modification MO229. Sorry, that relates to policy GR6 Part B. The second MO230 also refers to policy GR6 Part B. And if I'm reading this correctly, that the modification proposes to specify in Part B that it will also relate to all major development proposals for community facilities.
Thank you for that. So just moving on to the final policy, GR7, we don't have any further questions for that policy, and I don't believe there are any proposed modifications to that policy. Thank you. Okay, it's 15:13. I think we agreed earlier that we'll start at a 14 tomorrow, and you said that your supporting officers were available for that. So I think we'll draw a line today and adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow, and we'll start at a 14, and we'll cover that tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you very much. We're adjourned until then.